Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
All right, can I interrupt you for, real quick, because I know as soon as you sat up here, apparently the president saw you. And we have our first presidential tweet.
Yeah, Neil, President Trump just tweeted 4 minutes ago about Omarosa Manigault Newman, of course, who departed the White House last year and just wrote a book. When you give a crazed, crying lowlife a break and give her a job at the White House, I guess it just didn't work out. Good work by General Kelly for quickly firing that dog. It's already got nearly 2,000 retweets and about 4,500 likes, Neil.
And one of the tapes, he expressed surprise, I think, Cheryl, that she had been fired by General Kelly. But
yeah, and one of the tapes that was between the two of them.
Sad to see her go, or he didn't love that she was leaving. Seems a little bit different now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Well, I'm sorry. I knew you wanted to squeeze that tweet in there, so we did.
Well, I'd be delighted, although, again, you just wonder, dog? What is he thinking? Doesn't he know he's president?
What do you think of these tweets? They go with no abandon, on and on.
Well, I think, the best light I could shine on it, Neil, is that he is himself. That's Donald Trump. That's what he's thinking. I just wish that the impulse controls were a little stronger. And I think that it's offensive when, even though she is not someone who you would consider a Trump supporter at the moment, she's turned on him. You could call it all traitor, betrayal. But I don't know why you would stoop to the level of calling somebody a dog, and especially in a situation where his language often, he knows how people are going to react. So is it intentional? I don't know. I just think it's not good.
Yeah, and I was thinking, you and I mentioned it before, but she taped him, Michael Cohen, his former personal lawyer, taped him. Why did they do that?
Gotta find out. I
don't mean to put you on the spot.
I think it's just the kind of culture of the moment. It's kind of like, a reality show White House. That's just the way people operate.
But doing it in the Situation Room, that's a major issue, especially for our foreign intelligence partners.
I thought alarms went off if you did that.
Well,
in the Situation.
I thought you couldn't even bring the phone into the Situation Room. But so the question is, was General Kelly just using that as a private space to fire somebody?
By the way, do you think that exchange, she said, was threatening? It seemed pretty perfunctory.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. She said she felt as if she was being held prisoner. I don't know how that works. I don't know if you can I guess you could secure the door and not let people out. But, again, that's in her opinion. I don't know that that's the normal circumstance as a reporter. I've just walked through the Situation Room, and nobody said, hey, you can't get out of here or anything like that to me. But I bet they have all sorts of James Bond-type devices in there.
But you and I are old enough to remember, presidents taping those who came to the White House.
Yes.
Now the people going to the White House are taping the president.
Well, but it's worse than that if they're taping each other, right? So it's like there's no sense of trust or camaraderie. That's what's alarming to me, because that's supposed to be a team.
But the president has also suggested that he's taping people, right?
Yes.
He suggested
you're right.
that he was taping Comey. So that's why I said it's just kind of, it's the world they operate in. I mean, when you bring someone like Omarosa into the White House, that's the kind of behavior that you're going to get.
And what was Omarosa doing in the Situation Room to begin with, right?
Well, what happens to Omarosa after this? Is there any repercussions for doing
Good question.
in the Situation?
I remember a moment ago, Neil said he and I are old enough to remember. Well, I'm old enough to think, I don't know why this woman's famous in the first place. Exactly what did she do other than be famous?
For being famous.
Yeah, she's a reality TV villain, right? And then he gives her the job. She had senior staff status, $175,000 salary. You can't get much higher in the White House other than the president, $400,000. So here, and then she said, the president says no one liked her. Everyone thought she was vile and this and that. But she said nice things about me.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the question you're asking is she prosecuted as a result of this? I mean, clearly she breached some security protocols.
If there was a situation being discussed in there, or it was national security issues, I don't think her being fired is a national security.
Yeah.
No, but taping in the Situation Room.
The best.
Is there a law that says you can't?
No.
To John's point, tape in the situation?
I don't think so. No, I think there's a protocol. Like they take away your phones.
It is Wednesday, the 15th of August of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesday. Not because of any feeling of anti-Catholicism. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Absolutely. Yeah, not Opus Dei. But, maybe, how about a measure and a half of liberation theology? How about that, huh? And I'm not talking about a cocaine-packing nun either. Hear about that story? Nun in, Maryland? Somewhere in the north of the United States. Packing cocaine in her high heels. And then, this is a nun. And then she blamed it on her internet lover. Boy, I gotta tell you, these nuns are practicing a little bit different community outreach than what I was accustomed to as a kid. Very interesting, isn't it? Well, hey, we have a show today, don't we? Been having a little bit of a problem with infrastructure here in Southern Oregon, here in the West Coast of the continental United States. We've been having so many fires, I don't know. Also heat. And we had a brownout and then a blackout here at the mothership. And fortunately, it came right back. The power did come back. Almost immediately. Maybe, out just for a second or two. But, of course, then everything else has to generate up. Like the modem's got to get reset. And, it takes a little while for those four solids and one blinking to, happen. A few minutes. And a few minutes seems like an eternity. When you're on radio, TV, or any kind of media where you're expected to, continue. So we apologize for that. And I don't know why. It was an act of God as far as I'm concerned. It seemed like it. And, let's get on with the story. Now, Neil Cavuto, I apologize for having Fox clips, but this one was particularly interesting because they were dumbfounded too. They were, what? Trump said dog to a black woman? Did he mean B or did he mean the inner? Yeah, we know what he meant. Maybe both. Apropos. And I gotta say, it feels kind of icky, almost defending Omarosa. Yeah, she's not our hope. Let's be clear. And you never know, the way that this group works, they might put her out there, and she would have done willingly because she was a devotee of Donald Trump. They might put her out there, just do some counterintelligence on the counterintelligence. So you counter. And she might be out there just trying to throw a monkey wrench in the works, and she's really defending Donald Trump because then she'll turn around and say, what could happen is that she manipulated the tapes herself, which she has been known to do before, and got caught at it, or she'll just come around and say, I duped all these stupid liberals into believing that Omarosa, was telling the truth. I doctored these tapes. So there's all sorts of issues to put out here because this is the chaos government. And chaos governments are there to achieve a particular means. And that's usually an authoritarian takeover. And the only question is, are we going to be writing in Cyrillic or are we going to be writing in misspelled English? That's the only question. What do we have up on the rest of the menu today? I mean, there's so much news. I wanted to speak about all this other news, but we curated a show, and these are the stories that we have for you here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A drunken New York City cop on vacation unleashes racist terror on a black family after mistakenly barging into their Tennessee home. I think Airbnb is going to have a little problem on their hands now here. I truly do. We'll see. ICE agents set deportation traps for immigrants seeking legal residency. It's sort of like a speed trap. You go through there, and if you follow the law, they haul your ass to jail and make you pay a fine. If you're not following the law, they haul your ass to jail and make you pay a fine and then throw your ass back in jail. Isn't that weird? Deportation traps. Yeah, I'd like to become a legal resident. Come with me. Your child goes there. Your wife goes over there. And you're coming over here. Say goodbye. And Trump's Treasury Department is trying to block the Senate from continuing the financial portion of the Russia investigation. So now we know why he put the people in the departments that he did. Interesting, huh? Very interesting. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the Office of Refugee Resettlement removed email addresses and phone numbers from its website when it was under scrutiny for blocking an undocumented teen's abortion. All contact information to the Office of Refugee Resettlement was removed. Oh, you want to get a hold of them and tell them that maybe they should help the undocumented? Or how about, I just have a question about refugee resettlement. I'd like to be a sponsor family. Oh, there's no way to contact them. Did I say chaos government? And Trump signs a bill condemning Russia, then says Congress can't force him to follow it. Signing statement, be thy demise. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link, and that is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. She's been putting together some new hardware and software, so she might not be in there as often here in the next day or two as she's been in years previous. But there are plenty of people in the chat room to engage with you who have been around for a little bit. Oh, yeah. And if you take a gander over on the left side of the page there, from the chat room link, you will notice the Contribute Donate buttons, and we are unable to do this without you. Thank you for your generosity. The lights came blinking back after that blackout, and it was good. And your generosity really helped achieve that. Thank you. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Isn't that something? And we're on Facebook too. Isn't that something? We're kind of boycotting Facebook. Not really, but I always tell people Zuckerberg's going to do what Zuckerberg's going to do. And you can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. The show notes and links diary is posted about 10 minutes before showtime each day, and that is, of course, on Daily Co's, and you can find me there as Justice Putnam. Follow the show on Twitter at CookbookWest. Don't ask me why. Just type in West Coast Cookbook, and even before you get to the speakeasy part, it'll normally, on most machines, it'll give you the little prompt of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Will then show you Cookbook West. Okay, got that out of the way. On Facebook, we are as West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And podcasts of the show can be had by way of iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, YouTube, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Okay, let's get on to this drunken New York cop. On vacation. Okay. Imagine what he's like when he's at work. Jeez, if this is when he's relaxing. My God. Of course, anecdotally, the most violent, rowdy, substance-abusing group of people I ever was around, were off-duty cops. Just anecdotally. I mean, I was around a lot of hippies. I got to tell you, there were more walls punched out at parties at off-duty cop gatherings than really anywhere else I ever was. And that wasn't just a party, let me just say. Okay, but it's still anecdotal. I haven't seen every single off-duty cop gathering to say that that is the prominent and prevalent behavior. That's why we are democratic parts of the country. An apparently intoxicated New York City police officer, who wrote this? Travis Getty's a raw story. Maybe he's being sarcastic. Okay, an apparently intoxicated New York City police officer is accused of kicking down a black family's door and making racist threats while vacationing in Tennessee. Maybe he thinks it's like a Westworld, where you can just go in and it's like, oh, well, look, this is Southern Yesterday land. Let's go in and kick down black families' doors and terrorize them, wearing white hoods, maybe. Here's your costume. The officer, and this is where this story really got me. Here's a guy. Can you imagine a drunken black man on vacation? Say, like, I don't know, somewhere like Stamford, Connecticut. We'll say that. How about Stamford, Connecticut? And he's vacationing, and he gets all drunk, and he goes to the wrong house by mistake, where he's staying. And he kicks down the door, holds the family at gunpoint, says, I want my house. This is my house. Do you think that guy would be living? No. The officer, whose name has not been released, allegedly, broke into the family's Nashville home after mistaking it for the Airbnb he had rented while visiting Music City. What is it about these country western concert goers? They just breed crime, mayhem. Stop it. Nashville police are investigating the July 9th incident in the 12th South neighborhood, where residents are fed up with rowdy tourists staying in rental properties for weekend vacations. The officer kicked in the door at 2:30 in the morning after Conice Halliburton's teenage son heard him shouting outside from the front lawn, "This is my mother effing house!" Except he put the U in there, okay, and the hard CK. And the ING, too. But I already added that part. "This is my mother effing house," the man repeatedly screamed after barging into the family's home. The 40-year-old Halliburton called police and begged for help as her two oldest sons, ages 17 and 11, held the intruder in a back hallway. The man left the house after 911 dispatchers told her police were nearby, and a neighbor's surveillance camera caught the off-duty officer making racist threats on his way outside. "Try to shoot me, and I'll break every effing bone in your effing neck," the officer said, before calling the family effing Enners. Except he used, the I and the GG. Now, this is where it gets confusing. Not confusing, but this is where... Now, remember, this is Nashville, Tennessee. And they got like a country western thing here going on, and country western is making America great again. It's the worst pop music in the world. That's not western music. That's not country music, first of all. But they just liquor it up, and next thing you know, the local neighborhoods are being terrorized by these out-of-towners. But there is an affinity. There's a brotherhood that, look, it's unsaid. The brotherhood cannot be breached. Officers were unable to find the suspect after they arrived, even though they were nearby. But Halliburton and a neighbor confronted him the following morning at the Airbnb, and surveillance video captured his apology for breaking into the house. Halliburton called police again afterward, and it took him 2 hours to get there to investigate. Oh, yeah, it's not really high on our list. It's a fellow brother. We know what's going on. Or you're just black people, and we don't need to hurry up for you. That's probably what is more the case here. It's traumatizing, said Halliburton, who also has an 8-year-old child. I'm working on no sleep at all. I'm out here having nightmares. My kids are having nightmares. They're staying up all night because he's still out there. Now, Nashville police confirmed the New York City Police Department officer returned for questioning earlier this month, but no charges have been filed in the investigation, which remains ongoing. No charges. Ongoing investigation. You can go now. Rebecca Intralgo from Think Progress brings us this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, ICE says that it's just their job to locate and arrest immigrants, no matter who they are, what they are, and why they're here. Because, especially if they're black, brown, or, really undesirables. 2 federal immigration agencies worked together in a coordinated effort to set deportation traps for unsuspecting immigrants seeking legal status, the ACLU alleged in a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. The 2 agencies arranged meetings for the undocumented immigrants at government offices where they were subsequently arrested and in some cases deported. You know those traps that they get, like criminals that are, have arrest warrants out for them and they can't really locate them? And they offer, like free tickets to like some big sporting event if you show up at this stadium. And so then hundreds of these scofflaws show up thinking they're going to get free tickets to a sporting event and the cops arrest them. Sounds like this is a nice one. Oh, yeah, here is the office in which you can fill out the forms to be able to come here legally. Oh, you're trying to get here legally? Well, we're just going to have to throw you in jail, and then we'll deport you. Okay, according to emails obtained by the Boston Globe, between Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents and employees of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, ICE asked government officials to space out the meetings so that the public would not catch on and draw negative media interests. You see, ICE is a political arm, just like the SA was in Nazi Germany. You do know that. It's under the exact same construct. As far as scheduling goes, I would prefer not to do them all at one time, as it is not only a strain on our ability to transport and process several arrests at once, but it also has the potential to be a trigger for negative media interest, as we have seen in the past. And that was Andrew Graham, officer, writing to a USCIS employee in one email from October. He continued, "In my opinion, it makes sense for us to arrest aliens with final removal orders as they represent the end of the line in the removal process. They are typically the easiest to remove, and at the end of the day, we are in the removal business, and it's our job to locate and arrest them. ACLUs describe the meetings as traps. The plaintiff in the case, Lillian Calderon, is a 30-year-old Guatemalan-born mother of two who was brought to the U.S. when she was just 2 years old. According to the ACLU, she and her husband visited the UCSIS office in Rhode Island in January of this year to start the process of becoming a legal permanent resident. The ACLU of Massachusetts, which filed the lawsuit on her behalf, claims Calderon had already completed a successful interview when she was arrested by ICE agents and transported to a detention facility in Boston. A month after her arrest and following a lengthy legal back and forth, federal judge Mark Wolf issued an order barring ICE officials from deporting Calderon while the suit was pending. And in February, ICE finally released her from detention. Now, Calderon's case is too familiar to many immigrant families across the country, and there's some more instances of that documented here in the article. And so, are they a rogue agency? No, I wouldn't say that ICE is a rogue agency, and these immigration agencies are rogue by any means. They're doing exactly what Herr Führer wants them to do. Sarah K. Burris from Raw Story brings us this last offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. The U.S. Treasury Department is blocking inquiries from senators attempting to follow the money in the Russia scandal. According to a BuzzFeed report, there are crucial financial records that Treasury is refusing to provide to the Senate for the investigation. They're also refusing to send an expert to answer questions about the money trail. And to make matters worse, some of the department's own employees fear Treasury is intentionally trying to hold up the Senate. A series of emails obtained by BuzzFeed chart the barriers thrown up every time the Senate Intel Committee attempted to obtain bank records that could detail the path of Russian funding. This is not the first time Treasury has served as a block. Last year, the department refused to help the Senate's investigation with an expert behind closed doors. There were a series of shell companies, offshore accounts, and difficult-to-trace cash transactions. Some staff at FinCEN, that's the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, of course, indicated a fear of whether it was legal to share confidential information about a U.S. citizen. The division indicated that the Senate told them not to hand over personal financial documents of some individuals. Now, according to sources, these directives all came from senior officials in the General Counsel's office of the Treasury Department. Hello, München. The requested information follows tracked transactions of large amounts, often called SARs. Anything that could be suspected of money laundering or any financial misconduct is handed over from banks to Treasury. That's where the Senate investigators have focused their attention. The financial documents play a part of a very important roadmap, just like every other piece of evidence. Senator Richard Burr, Republican of North Carolina, told BuzzFeed, "They tell us whether you turn right or you turn left." The committee has renewed its request in recent weeks, and FinCEN has been slow to respond. Let's mull that over a bit. while we go to our break. And when we come back from said break, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, a dramedy in 2 acts. Blind Spotting is one of the few films that lives up to the label dramedy. It's co-written by the leads Daveed Diggs and Rafael Casal, who stars lifelong friends Colin and Miles. The story picks up during the final 3 days of Colin's probation for an earlier crime. On the first day, he witnesses a police shooting of an unarmed man, which leaves him shaken but determined to get through the probation and go on with his life. Unfortunately, Miles, despite his genuine love for his friend, isn't quite as determined. The two men work together for a moving company and spend lots of time driving around Oakland, a place where they both grew up but no longer recognize. The question isn't if Oakland is gentrifying, but rather how rapidly and whether there will still be room for people like Colin and Miles. One scene portrays the men stopping at a local convenience store and discovering they now sell $10 bottles of supposedly healthy green juice. When we later learn what originally landed Colin in prison, we see that all hipster encounters are not so comical. Blind spotting, a term coined by Colin's ex-girlfriend who is studying psychology, refers to the phenomenon of seeing a single two-dimensional form that can be easily perceived as either of two very different things. The vase versus two human profiles example is used here symbolically. In Colin's case, his record and blackness make it impossible for people to overlook his criminal past, whereas for Miles, his whiteness makes it a challenge for him to be seen as authentic, despite being as much a part of Oakland's culture as Colin. Blind Spotting is one of the best of 2018 so far. It's powerful, well done, and is as relevant as films get.
This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and beat us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. Where were you on August 21st, 2017? If you're like me, and a couple 100 million other Americans, you were watching the total eclipse of the sun.
This is it.
It was breathtaking, mind-blowing, awesomely spectacular, and potentially educational, because a new study shows that folks who saw the celestial event sought information on solar eclipses about 16 times, both before and after the big day. In the U.S., some 216 million adults viewed the eclipse. That's 88% of the adult population. This viewership dwarfs that of the Super Bowl, and it ranks among the most watched events in American history. That's according to the Michigan Scientific Literacy Survey of 2017. John Miller of the University of Michigan conducts a national study of Americans' scientific know-how twice a year. But last year, he added another survey over the week or two after the eclipse, while the experience was still fresh.
Oh my God, that was amazing!
He discovered that in the months prior to the eclipse, there was a flurry of interest in the phenomenon. People searched online for eclipse-related information and talked about it with family and friends. And the nearly 20 million who traveled to see the eclipse were even more hungry for heavenly knowledge, averaging nearly 25 episodes of eclipse-related information seeking. In comparison, those who, for whatever reason, missed the event only reported reading or chatting about it 6 times. But the interest didn't end with the sun's reappearance. After the event, people kept on reporting online learning and continued conversations. Miller's survey also indicates that by the end of 2017, 70% of those questioned were able to explain the meaning of a total solar eclipse. That's a considerable step up from the 50% who understood what an eclipse was at the beginning of the year. Even people who didn't see the eclipse were more likely to correctly define it by year's end. suggesting that the media coverage and general hubbub rubbed off. However, the eclipse mania did not appear to boost our overall understanding of the relationship of the Earth and the Sun. The percentage of respondents who knew that the Earth circles the Sun once each year remained essentially unchanged at around 64%. These findings should give science communicators added incentive to get the word out before the next big North American eclipse, April 8th, 2024.
That was incredible.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. In 2010, when many members of Congress were asked what part of the Constitution justified how they wanted federal money to be spent, they claimed their positions were justified by the General Welfare Clause. The General Welfare Clause states, "The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States." However, people disagree over whether the General Welfare Clause gives Congress the power to spend taxes on anything it pleases, or whether it refers only to spending on the enumerated powers listed in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 of the Constitution. Under our Constitution, the Supreme Court of the United States is given the power to interpret the meaning of the Constitution. The Supreme Court did not rule on the meaning of the General Welfare Clause until the 1930s. In two cases, the court ruled that the General Welfare Clause did not limit Congress to its enumerated powers. But the court did say that spending must be limited to matters promoting the national, not local, welfare. In recent decades, arguments have again arisen about congressional powers under the General Welfare Clause. One side argues that government under the U.S. Constitution is one of enumerated powers, limiting congressional powers to those listed in the Constitution. The other side takes the position that the powers of Congress are not limited to those enumerated in the Constitution. Whichever of these positions dominates will have a significant impact on American government and the American people. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
It's Tuesday, August 14, 2018.
The Trump administration has had the knives out for the Endangered Species Act for more than a year.
Administration using California wildfires to undermine endangered species.
The density of our forest is too high, the fuel load's too great.
And pushed for more aggressive logging. Amid record heat, Glacier National Park is now on fire. Plus, federal court orders Trump's EPA to ban a dangerous pesticide.
All of those dangers and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
People forget that trees are the things that are burning. That's why we have to clear cut them. Remember Smokey the Bear's motto, only you can prevent forests.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, before you get going, a little bit of business to get out of the way. I wanted to welcome aboard our newest GNR affiliate partner, KLDK, 96.5 FM in Dixon, New Mexico.
Hey, KLDK, welcome aboard.
That's up near Taos, one of my favorite parts of the country. What do you got for us today, Desi Doyen?
Well, first, another heat record shattered, this time in Glacier National Park in Montana over the weekend. The park recorded an all-time high of 100 degrees at Glacier National Park. And now a fast-moving wildfire has forced partial evacuation of the park. By the way, you may want to go see Glacier National Park's glaciers sooner rather than later because thanks to global warming, most of its original 150 glaciers have disappeared. It's now down to just 26. 26, and it is expected to lose all of its glaciers within a few decades. Meanwhile, not surprising for Californians, but NOAA announced that July 2018 in California was officially the hottest month ever recorded in the state. That sustained record heat has made firefighting extremely difficult for those ongoing 16 major fires burning in the state. Smoke from those fires extends as far as New York City. California fire officials and forestry experts, firefighters and scientists all say that longer and hotter summers driven by climate change are a primary factor in worsening western wildfires. But the Trump administration is denying the role of climate change and instead is using the fires as pretext for a full court press to push major policy changes that benefit politically powerful agriculture and logging industries.
Hate to let any good catastrophe go to waste.
Yep. Although the California firefighting agency CAL FIRE has repeatedly insisted there is no shortage of water for firefighting, Trump Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross last week directed federal fishery managers to waive endangered species rules for rivers. That, as LA Times columnist Michael Hiltzik explained in a recent broadcast, is actually a transparent cover to undermine the Endangered Species Act and justify diverting more water to corporate agribusiness operations in the Central Valley.
So the real subtext here is, once again, an effort to serve the growers. And the whole point of having an Endangered Species Act is to make sure that they survive despite all of these economic interests that are lined up to kill them off.
And then, in a visit to California neighborhoods that were devastated by wildfire on Sunday, Trump Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke entirely dismissed climate change as a factor.
It doesn't matter whether you believe or don't believe in climate change.
Actually, yes, it does matter whether you believe or don't believe in climate change.
It doesn't matter whether you believe or don't believe in climate change. What is important is we manage our forests.
Now that is a euphemism for commercial logging, which Zinke made clear when he went even further in an interview with right-wing outlet Breitbart News. In a dangerous escalation of rhetoric, Zinke falsely blamed environmental groups for the wildfires.
We have been held hostage by these environmental terrorist groups that have not allowed public access, that refuse to allow harvest of timber.
Environmental terrorists? Really?
That's what he said. Now, actual forestry scientists say the exact opposite, that forest management is actually far more complex, climate change can't be ignored, and what's actually needed is more funding for comprehensive techniques like controlled burns, not more logging. And that requires more funding from the federal government.
So if we just listen to everything that the Trump administration says and understand it to mean the opposite, then we'd be in pretty good shape.
Then we'd be in line with what scientists say. Finally, some good news. A federal appeals court has ordered the Trump EPA to ban all uses of the controversial pesticide chlorpyrifos within 60 days. The court ruled that former Trump EPA chief Scott Pruitt endangered public health by refusing to ban the dangerous pesticide despite extensive scientific evidence that even tiny levels of exposure can harm the developing brains of children and babies.
Evidence schmevidence. For much more evidence on all of these stories, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Please, baby, please, what fools are we who cannot see the forest for the trees? Now I'm the one that I outsmarted.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1907. That was the day known in the San Francisco labor movement as Bloody Tuesday. In the early 20th century, San Francisco was a city with a strong union movement. In early May, the Carmen's Union called a strike against United Railroads, the company that ran the city's transit system. 1,500 carmen walked off the job, demanding an 8-hour workday and a $3 per day wage. The strike began on a Sunday. The city's transit lines stood silent. The next day, tensions began to mount. The company put up barbed wire around the car barns. Strikers believed this was in preparation to get the streetcars back up and running. Strikers and supporters gathered around the car barns. The day passed with nothing happening. But the next morning, as picketers gathered, 6 cars rolled out of the barns. Hired guns rode with the scab drivers. Angry picketers attempted to stop the streetcars, bombarding them with bricks and stones. Gunfire erupted between the armed company guards and the picketers. 2 picketers were killed in the hail of gunfire. Many more were injured. But this bloody day was not the end of the injuries. It's estimated that 24 people were killed in accidents while scab drivers operated the streetcars. Strikes by public transportation workers were often some of the most contested work actions to take place in big cities. These workers had the ability to impact work sites far beyond their own since they transported laborers to work. The magnitude of a transportation strike would ripple throughout a city, and these strikes were often met with fierce resistance. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Hey, did you hear about, 50 some odd priests in Pennsylvania got, arrested or something for their, child abuse allegations or actual instances where there was child abuse? 50 some odd priests. Took them a while. Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. It's really just a egg dish with hollandaise. Believe me. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with weather from around the world, and we always begin. Weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 59 degrees Fahrenheit, and we will be going to a high of 96, 97, and we'll call it like mid-90s, maybe mid to upper 90s, mid-90s. We're going to hang our hats on that. Why don't we? Winds currently out of the southwest at 1 mile per hour, barely negligible at 1 mile per hour. Of course, they will then shift out of the northwest and then increase to 5 to 10 miles per hour, which is the normal clip of wind speed that we get here. It will continue out of the northwest this evening at the same clip of 5 to 10 miles per hour, but we do have a 30% chance of rain tonight, probably brought on by thunderstorm activity because of the confluence of hot and cold. So, I don't know. We kind of hope that that's the case. If a lightning strike hits in an already burned area, it's okay. And most of the west is burned. Oh, my God. Air quality alert, an active air quality alert is in place because air quality is very unhealthy at 221 parts per million. Grass pollen is low, if that bothers you. But I would say that whatever is being burned up, I've been getting it. There's something oily, and I'm afraid it's poison oak that has been burned. I'm not getting blistering on my lungs as far as I know. But but it's been bad, and I've gotten, if you can hear me being stuffed up, it's because something in the smoke, pardon me, has hit my antihistamine sector, and my body has responded accordingly. Fight on, boys and girls. Fight on. All right. High pressure dominates the area, of course, and it is rising at 29.81 inches. Visibility is down to 6 miles because of all the smoke. Humidity is currently at 72%. The daytime UV index remains very high, though at 8. Usually it's been at 9 when it's been very high in this part of the world. But all the smoke is filtered out, just a smidgen of it. So something's protecting us. It's all dangerous. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Oh, for those of you new to the show, that's what I call my pea tape. The popping peas. Alrighty. Well, I had the list up. Here we go. London is 75 and partly cloudy. Paris is 74 and fair. What? It's August. It's supposed to be like 98 and absolutely so humid. Anybody over the age of 62 will fall over dead. And I'm right in there. I better be careful. I'm going to the frontier. I'll go to the coast. Or maybe we'll just go to the Italian-French Alps. That would be fun instead. Speaking of which, Rome, Italy, they're not even anywhere near the Italian-French Alps, but it's in Italy. Rome right now is 66 degrees Fahrenheit with a thunderstorm, and they just happen to have, coincidentally, an active thunderstorm and lightning storm alert in which electrical activity will be impacted by this storm. The flash flooding alert has been called off. Kiev is 90 degrees and fair. Wow. Kabul is 85 and fair. Stay inside, wedding parties. Don't get married today. And don't parade around about it either, please. Hong Kong is 79 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 83 and mostly cloudy, and they as well have an active thunderstorm and lightning storm advisory in which electrical activity in the infrastructure could be impacted. There, I got it out. Sydney, Australia, because they're in winter now, is 63 and clear. San Francisco, California, is 58 degrees and cloudy with an active air quality alert from smoke from the wildfires in the region. And New York, is 79 degrees and sunny with an active heat advisory. So, as I say, there's no place cooler than being with a cool New Yorker. So stay cool, friends. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Amanda Michelle Gomez from Think Progress brings us this first offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The health department removed quietly all of its contact information, staff contact info, email addresses, phone numbers, anything that you could contact the Office of Refugee Resettlement was removed from its website. Now, the guy running that office has no experience in refugee resettlement. What does he have experience in? Setting up these crisis pregnancy clinics in which to dupe women into thinking that they're an actual medical facility, but what they are is a propaganda office in which in some instances, or shall I say, many instances, terrorize women into, not having women's health care. That is what he has experience in. And they just happened to get rid of all of this contact info when they were under scrutiny for blocking an undocumented teen's abortion. Yeah, she was raped, but God has a plan, doesn't he? Yes, they do. Well, they have, excuse my sniffling, the smoke has really gotten to me, and I'm suffering pretty bad, and I'm trying to muddle through, and I apologize. I hope I'm not grossing people out. So, people seeking to contact the Office of Refugee Resettlement could do so by emailing a general number and email at the Administration for Children and Families, the parent of the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So you can still get a hold of them, but you got to go through layers and layers and layers. So the person running this office is Scott Lloyd, obviously doing God's work.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Speaking of doing God's work, we always do God's work here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Why else would we have Smothered Benedict Wednesdays? And Eric Bollert brings us the last offering here at the chef's table. At West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, the White House claims it's allowed to ignore a directive from Congress. Of course they do. In an embarrassing show of support for Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, Trump has declared that he is free to ignore a directive from Congress to condemn Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea. Trump signed into law the Defense Authorization Bill for fiscal year 2019 during a ceremony at Fort Drum in upstate New York. You know, the one where he said, "You're not a true patriot unless you want to give up your pay raise that you haven't had for almost 14 years. Give it to me. You're no patriot." I'm serious. He said that, and a lot of people thought he was serious. He did. And who did he say that to? The most deployed outfit in the military. Yeah, patriotism. Who has it? All right. The bill contains an explicit demand that the U.S. must not recognize the sovereignty of Russia over Crimea. Yet just hours after signing the legislation, Trump issued a signing statement making clear that it will say whatever it wants about Crimea and Russia, regardless of what the bill says. See? They got Mnuchin in there at Treasury saying, no, you can't follow the Russian money. And you got the money, but we're not going to issue any statement condemning Russia because I got a better deal with them than I got with you. All right, well, that does bring us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. Oh, I'm so sorry to leave you on that note. Maybe there's something new with Omarosa. That'll lighten the day. Ugh. Well, do stay tuned for breaking news on Netroots Radio as it happens. We'll be back tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays here. And there is always breaking news. And I implore you to continue listening to Netroots Radio for breaking news as it happens. And we'll visit with you tomorrow right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.